All right, welcome back to Morning Live. We've requested that you send us your expectations, your anticipations on the budget speech that the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan will be tabling later this afternoon here. What do you think the Minister should touch on? Let's take a look at some of the tweets that you sent through to @MorningLive SABC. The first one from Silepe Thomas writing to Morning Live saying that by implementing the mandate of the National Development Plan, I hear it is a good document with a lot of good outcomes. All right, one more from Ndelele Collins. This budget must also focus on early childhood development, a sector which has been overlooked all along. All right, keep those tweets coming through at Morning Live SABC. We are going to be able to put them on screen and hear what your expectations are. Well, Leanne is still in Cape Town in Parliament, looking at all the important issues pre the budget speech. Leanne, it's back to you.
Palesa, thank you very, very much. And also thanks to the viewers for writing in and nice to see some of your expectations ahead of today's budget speech. Well, let's talk business, as I promised you before the break, that we're going to take it further, talk about small business. One of the growing sectors of the South African economy, of course, is small business and entrepreneurship. And let's talk to Xolani Qubeka. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Small Business Development Institute, which is a member of the Black Business Council. But you will remember as well that Xolani is one of the former CEOs of the BBC as well. So nice to see you.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Small business, they really struggle at a time like this and seems to be reaching, seem to be struggling to reach a meaningful number. What can be done to assist small businesses?
Well, first, I think we need to understand that we're dealing with an old apartheid economic architecture that has placed SMMEs in the periphery of the economy. What South Africa needs is a national SMME policy master plan linked to the national development to ensure that we can put emphasis on developing long-range SMMEs that are able to integrate in the value chain of major companies for them to be sustainable. Sometimes we think the problem is access to finance, but the main issue is access to long-term sustainable opportunities. Therefore, it is important that we can focus on ensuring that we have a master plan that ensures that South Africa has one template in the public and private sector that ensures sustainable support for SMMEs.
Okay. You know, when you look at studies around the world and people around the world talking about the fact that that small businesses, entrepreneurship is where the key lies to this massive unemployment rate that we are seeing here in South Africa. This is where we need to make inroads and we need to make it bigger to get rid of that wage bill, that massive wage bill that we're sitting on, and to create more opportunities and employment opportunities. So, to follow other global countries, what are they doing right? What are we not doing right?
Well, I think South Africa, for instance, has taken the right step in establishing the Ministry of Small Business Development so that we can then drive small business development not simply in a fragmented way, but to ensure that we do what other winning nations that have ministries of small business development, such as Indonesia, such as Malaysia, where there is a concise focus on ensuring that there is adequate support, particularly in high-impact segment, to ensure that we can meet as a country, for instance, the goals that have been set in the National Development Plan, that is by 2030, South Africa ought to at least create 90% of their jobs from SMMEs and targeting 11 million jobs. Therefore, the support and adequate financial support for the Department of Small Business Development is fundamental to ensure that South Africa's economic architecture can move from a big business approach to a small business-centric economy.
What are you hoping that the Minister is going to stand up there today and say that is going to help small businesses?
Well, first, I'm hoping that the Minister would give more financial support to the Department of Small Business so that it is enabled, to do its task of marshalling South Africa into a new trajectory of economic and inclusive development.
So that's the main thing for you. But
for me, that is the main thing. because really what we need here, we need more incentives and grants for SMMEs to enable them, to get a huge push towards entering the mainstream of the economy, and to ensure that they can integrate in the major value chains of large companies, ensuring that they have access, to sustainable market. Yes, access to finance is very, very important, but to simply give loans to SMMEs is inadequate. We need to make sure that we can have grants towards machinery, tools, systems, and ensure that they have soft lending as they enter the mainstream.
One of the big issues as well is that of taxes. I mean, we've got a big shortfall that needs to be made up, and we're talking 28 billion rand. And the reality is that the fear is that company taxes are going to be increased, and this is again going to affect businesses that cannot afford it, and that's the reality. Whereas there's a trend around the world to see the cut in taxes, and yet our taxes seem to be going higher. How is this going to affect us, and your expectations on that behalf?
Well, unfortunately, the minister has a balancing act, in terms of the demands of a developing economy. But we also need to be inventive. Sometimes we need to spend more money on developing SMMEs who are future employers, in this country. So it's got to be more cuts, incentives directed, I think, at small businesses to ensure that we can increase the fiscus. I think in the last financial year, it was proven that at least a significant number of new taxpayers came from SMMEs, which means we must see how did we reach that? What is it that we can do to support and boost SMMEs to ensure that they can be the future taxpayers and enlarge, our middle class, as well as enlarging the fiscus.
Xolani, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Thanks so much for talking to us here on the program. Xolani Qubeka is the Chief Executive Officer of the Small Business Development Institute. He was also the former CEO of the Black Business Council. But remember that the Small Business Development Institute is a member of the BBC as well. Thank you so much for joining us here. Well, I can tell you it's a hive of activity. I've got my neck swaying in every direction. I'm trying to look in every car that drives in here, and believe me, the minute I catch a glimpse of our finance minister making his way in here, you have my word that I'm going to jump on his car. Hopefully, nothing dramatic will happen to me, and we'll be able to speak to him so we can just find out how he's feeling this morning. We've managed to get him in previous years, so we're really hoping we'll be able to have just a word or two with him tonight. Today. Gosh, tonight. Where am I? I think I'm still sleeping. All right. Well.